Hello, we are here for a new podcast with Perry Yeatman, and she works at Save the Children Global Ventures. Perry, can you please introduce yourself and your organization?
Absolutely, and just delighted to be here. So my name is Perry Yeatman. I am the Chief Development Officer for Save the Children Global Ventures. Save the Children Global Ventures is essentially the innovative finance arm of Save the Children. And what we're really looking to do is to find new ways to bring capital to the mission of Save the Children. And we do that kind of with, we call 4 lines of business, if I can just very quickly touch on them, because I think it's interesting that we're not just doing one thing, we're actually trying to cover, we're test and learn. We're trying to look at all of the ways capital can help improve the lives of underserved children around the world. So the first one is what most people know probably best, which is impact investing. Essentially, we're raising funds, and they are where you invest the money, and then we use it for a period of time to do great things for kids, and then we return the money with an agreed rate of return. Impact investing. The second one, venture philanthropy. Here also we have a fund, and what you're doing there is it's a donation to Save the Children. So for the funder, it's a donation, you get the tax benefits, but then when the money comes in to Save the Children, we use it to invest in social enterprises and financial instruments that have that flywheel, that ability to keep going beyond a linear program. The third is using carbon finance. We recognize that actually the number of companies and others committed to reducing their emissions and buying carbon credits, that done right, that the creation of those carbon credits could actually be great community development opportunities. And so we are leveraging that through nature-based solutions. And then the fourth one, I think, which is we call it innovative finance. It's more traditional in some ways, is looking at different ways of contracting. So results-based contracts, more pay for performance, PPPs, public-private partnerships, all of those, blended finance, all of those things are in that fourth bucket as well. So that's how we are trying to bring more money into the mission beyond traditional grants.
Very well. So you sat on both sides of the table, corporate executive at Kraft Unilever and foundation president, and now chief development officer at an NGO building an investment vehicle. What does that vantage point tell you that most NGO leaders simply can't see?
Well, I think, we're not the only ones doing this. So I do want to say there are other NGOs who have, kind of seen this opportunity and are also working in this space. But for me, what I think I really bring is an understanding of the positive power of business and market-based mechanisms. I also think I bring a unique understanding of the funder perspective because I've literally been a funder. I've been a major donor. I've been a foundation head, so it's like I understand what are they looking for and how do we connect the mission that we have with the objectives that they have, right? And that's really, I think, what people need to be doing more of is to really understand that I call it WIFM, what's in it for me? Everybody has to have a way of getting what they're trying to achieve in the world done. And the reciprocity is what makes a really strong partnership.
So Save the Children has been operating for decades. In 2023, it created a venture arm. What does it say about the sector that it took this long, and what finally made it possible to create this new venture?
I was lucky enough to do a project with Peter Drucker back in the early 90s. And he said something, and I may not get the quote exactly right, but basically he was saying that the number one barrier to success in the future is success in the past or the present, right? And so if you've been successful for over 100 years with the model that you've had, it's really hard to think that you need a different model, right? It's just challenging for a lot of people. I think that I really love our CEO, and she and I share something. We share many things, but one of the things we share is the idea that you should never let a good crisis go to waste, right? And it sounds very harsh, and we both come from a business background, so maybe we think of it that way, but when you have a burning platform, like we could see years before it happened that ODA was not going to be the only way to achieve our mission. It just wasn't possible. When you looked at the size of the need and the size of the available funding in that traditional model, it was never going to be able to close the gap. And so we really needed to think more broadly. And so we began this, I'm really happy to say we began this more than 5 years ago. And then SCGV, Save the Children Global Ventures, was formally incorporated, I think it was in May of 23, right? So ahead of the collapse of USAID, et cetera, we were already knowing that we were going to need to go this direction to be able to achieve our mission for kids. But I think that, you know, what happened last year in the United States and then rippled around the world, it just made it all the more clear that nobody has the opportunity not to be looking and asking very serious questions about the, you know, what got you here won't get you there. So how are we going to change? And I think a desperate situation creates a boldness, a fearlessness, and an opportunity for radical change. And I think, you know, what we've done with creating an innovative finance arm is we're looking for the and. This is not replacing Save the Children. We have the exact same mission. We are an and for the core of what they do.
So Save the Children Global Venture doesn't build social enterprises inside Save the Children. It invests in social enterprises. Why does that distinction matter? And why do so few NGOs understand the difference?
That's a great question. You know, I think for us, when you think about the core, again, I think everything, a lot of this comes back to basic business principles, right? You should be focused on the core of what you do better than anybody else in the world. And you should be able to outsource or use others for what you don't do. We have so many amazing experts. I would argue that we probably know more about what works for kids and what can help them stay healthy, educated, protected than anybody else in the world, any other organization. But we don't have a ton of business people and a ton of business consultants. That's not who we staffed for, right? Now in SCGV, we hired experts, but that's not what the core of Save the Children is. So when you look at trying to build social enterprises, first of all, you want to make sure there's product market fit. You want to make sure those are built in the environments and in the context in which we want them and need them to be used. We want to make sure that they reflect what is actually desired by what we would call a beneficiary, but what these social enterprises would call a customer or a consumer. So instead of us trying to do something we don't know how to do, which is run businesses, start businesses, run businesses, we are seeking businesses where they've already got a proven product market fit, where they're already operating in the context where they're needed. And what we're trying to do is provide that patient capital, that bridge between seed funding and between when they're really big enough for commercial capital to make sense, right? So we're that bridge between those two things. And I think that means that we're each doing what we should be doing. And Save the Children is really looking at expertise. A lot of our pipeline comes through Save the Children country offices. They know what's working. They know what companies have been founded, what solutions have been created. And we can help them scale both through investment, but also by using them in our programs and helping them prove their case.
So through your organization, you mobilize over $23 million of capital across 11 social enterprises. When those investments generate returns, that's what you expect from an investment, not for external funders, but for the NGO itself. What changes? What does unrestricted revenue from an investment portfolio do to an organization's DNA?
This is one of those things that I think is just so remarkable about this approach. And I would encourage every NGO to be looking at venture philanthropy because it is a donation. So even the basic, you know, legal, regulatory, you know, donor behavior that you're used to can be the same. But you do then need to hire experts and have a way of managing social enterprises, which is different than managing programs. But I digress. What I think is so cool is that what you said, it's a return, right? So much of what we do is linear, right? You see the problem, you identify a solution, you get funding for it, you run the program. At the end, you measure. Hopefully, and often you've created lasting change. But if you want to expand the program, if you want to run the program again, normally you have to go back and get new and additional funds. The beauty of setting up something like venture philanthropy, where, as you say, we do expect a return. People often ask us, it's like, well, you want a profit? I'm like, of course we want a profit. Don't you want us to want a profit? Because if the money is intended to come back, then it's not one use. So one donor dollar in our multiplier fund can be used forever, repeatedly, time and time and time again, as we send it out as a loan or an equity investment. And then when it comes back, either because the loan is repaid or we have had a successful exit, you've got that money all over again. So think of it as an evergreen fund that just continues to grow. I think this should be what all of us are thinking about, because now, instead of raising that same dollar again and again, you actually have a pot of money that is growing that you can then direct out to do more good for whatever impact you're trying to create. So I think that recyclable aspect is a huge and important concept. And I think we frankly need to just not be shy at all about talking about the return. I think we need to not only not be shy about, we need to embrace it. We need to celebrate it, because that's the way we get leverage on the effort we made to raise that first dollar.
So, about the return, most NGO leaders will say that their board or donors wouldn't allow this. Is that true, or is this a story that organizations tell themselves to avoid changing their attitude?
Well, obviously, I can't speak for other boards and organizations, but my observation would be the donors that I've been speaking to, they are looking for NGOs to do this kind of thing. They also, many of them have fatigue of the current model, and they can see that it won't be enough. So it's not the current model works for certain things in certain contexts. And of course, we're going to continue. As I said, we are an and for Save the Children, right? But what I've said, most donors, when we talk about innovative finance, they applaud it. Even if they don't choose to invest with us that way, they applaud it. Now, boards have a different role. Boards need to think about the risk. Boards need to think about the long-term, sustainability of the organization. And what I would say is venture philanthropy being different than impact investing. Venture philanthropy, the money comes in, it's ours, it's a donation. We want to get it back because we want to be able to use it again and again for kids. But if we don't get it all back, we don't have a payer on the other side that we still owe. So the risk for venture philanthropy is much lower than, for example, impact investing. If you're truly making a commitment to return the capital plus a rate of return to the investor, then yes, I can see why. And by the way, there are legal and regulatory issues in the SEC, et cetera. So what I'm saying is you have to hire experts. You have to do it right. You cannot take the program team and now just have them, or the traditional fundraising team, and say, okay, now you guys are going to manage a fund and it's going to be social enterprises instead of programs. That won't work. And I think that's what boards are raising. Boards are saying, do we have the right people? Do we have the right controls? But I would tell you that if you really want to do this, if you believe in it the way we do, absolutely, you can hire the right people, put together the right teams, put together the right protocols. Most of the people on the SCGV board are professional investors. They know what they're doing. They know how to do this. And they actually our board chair sits on the Save the US board, the Save the International board, and on the SCGV board. So he's really looking at the full movement.
Once again, it boils down to people. So you raised millions of dollars for Save the Children through traditional development channels. If you were starting over again today in this challenging environment, what would you build differently?
Well, honestly, I just wish I had all these tools in my toolbox from the beginning. 6 years ago, I came to Save the Children. My background is, kind of 30 years in big business, right? As you said, I was a senior executive at Kraft. I was a senior executive at Unilever. I was a global agency person. And for me, when I came in, what I really wanted to do was to look at corporations and to say, how do we build strategic alliances? I don't want to just work with the foundation. I don't want to be something that is a feel-good move. Feel-good opportunities don't have stickiness. They don't have the power to stay necessarily if the CEO changes or the direction changes, et cetera. But if you are strategic to the core, to the heart of that business, you are helping them. I always told the team at the end of the day, and I love big business. I love business. I think the positive power of business is unbeatable for changing the world. But when you look at what a company is going to do, it all basically boils down to two things. You either have to be saving them money or you have to be helping them make money. Like those are the two things, because a business model is based on profit. It is based on revenue. It has to deliver those things in order to survive and fund the next round of innovation, et cetera. So when you look at that, if I had had more tools in the toolbox to be able to say, how can we best combine our unique core strengths in order to deliver something that either makes or saves you money in the end, right? It could be further steps removed, but it has to draw a line to that, and simultaneously directly achieves our mission for the world's most underserved children, right? If I had more tools, we could have gone even bigger. I mean, the team did a great job, and we do have some incredible corporate partners and some really strong and long relationships. But I wish I'd had innovative finance back then.
Very good. So uh, there is an important feature of your organization, child lens investing. So can you explain what is child lens investing and why it should be the new ESG? That mainstream capital, not just the NGO fund, should be oriented around missions like yours. What would it actually take to get Vanguard or BlackRock to build a fund around that thesis? And what's Save the Children's role in making that happen?
So, first of all, I think that I think about, like, right now, if you look at my life, and I think it'd be the true of any parent, right, or grandparent or aunt. So many of the life decisions that you make every single day actually already root around your children, right? You know, your largest investments. Did you buy a house in a place where there was a good school? Did you choose a certain job because you could be home on the weekends? Did you? So many things you make in economic terms are actually already child lens investing, because you're making your choices informed by what would be best for children or my children. And so what we're trying, so that's why I think this is something that, ESG, I'm a little cautious about, because of course it became very political. Child lens investing should not be political. All of us want the best for our children, right? So this is something we already do. And what we're trying to point out is, for kids, because they can't vote, because they can't shop, and because we're talking, kind of under 10s, it's hard for them to have a voice sometimes. But what we need to do is look at the fact that the single greatest ROI, right, return on investment, is in early childhood, whether that's health, education, protection. Getting the right start in life is what sets you up to be a successful adult. And societies are built on successful adults, people who are able to work, people who are mentally healthy, people who are physically capable, et cetera. So this is all of our problem, right? Everybody should care about the fact that our kids, too many kids in this world are not healthy, educated, protected. And child lens investing is about trying to bring this to the surface and to say, look, if you want a great investment, both in terms of the money and the return, but also in terms of societal impact, then this is what you can focus on. And our role in that is to demonstrate that you don't have to make a large trade-off between what you can get as a return and what you can do with that money as social impact. We are trying to demonstrate, this is the age-old discussion with impact investing. You can either have impact or you can have, a great return. We're trying to close that gap. We're trying to demonstrate, because anything we do, by definition, it's impact first. We're not creating funds because we want to be Vanguard or BlackRock. That's not our plan. We're creating funds because we need to put more money, direct more capital into things that are good for children. And so we do believe that child lens investing, which is quite simply a filter that says when you're looking at what companies to invest in, be sure that you are thinking in terms of the product and the service and where they operate and how they operate. All of the elements, pre and post investment are good for kids and exponentially beneficial for children and families, right? That's what we're doing. It's not a tough concept. We're doing it with others. And the reason we're trying to show that it works is because no matter how big Save the Children is, and even combined with our peers, we can't solve this alone. The gap is too large. But if you went to your, financial manager and instead of saying, I want you to use that ESG lens for my investment portfolio, you said, I want you to use child lens investment for my portfolio, that's where the game really begins to change.
Fascinating. Now, last question. This podcast is for nonprofit professionals, so we hope that they'll get insights from this podcast. Now, to this audience, what would you recommend them to do? One thing differently tomorrow in order to bring about change and get out of this crisis?
So I think the number one thing I would say is, well, am I allowed to have more than one? First, I would say it really is, it always starts with impact first. What is it that you are trying to create? What is the outcome you're driving to? Why do you exist, right? You've got to stay focused on that. And that doesn't have to change. That can be your North Star. But then what I would tell you is really open yourself up to reconsider everything about how you then create that impact. Where do you get your funds? How do you align yourself? Who has to deliver the impact? If a social entrepreneur's company can do a better job providing clean water somewhere, or can do a better job at vaccine delivery or running a health clinic, why would we need to do that then? That's not what we have to do if others can do it better. So focus on impact, but then think like a business person. I think every single organization in the world would be better served. And I mean, like literally schools and other, if they understood the principles of business and they applied them with more rigor. And that's not to say forget the profit piece, because of course schools and other, not everybody has to make a profit, but in terms of efficiency and effectiveness and marketing and organizational structure and continually evolving, right? The competition in business is fierce. It's why a lot of business people can seem very cold, right? Or very like focused on the numbers. I think we need a little more of that in the NGO sector, right? I don't want to lose, the passion for the mission. And I feel it. Like I come to work every day. I choose Save the Children because I believe in the mission, right? That is what gets me up out of bed every morning. But then I use my business skills to try to figure out how am I going to reach millions and hundreds of millions of kids, not just a couple hundred. And that's how I think we all need to think. We need to be bold and we need to be open. Our CEO once said, is this a profession or is it a calling? What I would tell you is it's both. So hold on to the calling, which is your mission, but then make it a profession by bringing business principles about resource allocation, about efficiency, effectiveness, marketing. I've said it, but like that's really what I would do. And I think a lot of NGOs are now looking for people with business backgrounds. They're not just hiring more of the same. And I think that's the blend we need. We need the people who have the history and have done this and know how to do this and built those incredible donor relationships. But we also need people who think really differently and can bring new insights and whole new models to the frame.
Great. Terry, thank you so much for your time and your precious insights.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.